Here we're talking about the new Alexa 35 camera that we announced just a little while ago. The Alexa 35 is our brand new Super 35 camera built around an all-new ALEV4 4.6K sensor. In 4.6K open gate, it allows you up to 75% frames per second in uncompressed ARRI RAW. In 4K Super 35, you can actually get up to 120 frames per second in uncompressed ARRI RAW. And it's an all-new sensor. It offers 17 stops of dynamic range. That's 2.5 stops more than any existing ARRI camera. So 1.5 stops in the highlights, 1 full stop in the shadows. Another characteristic of the camera with the new sensor is a feature called textures. It's like having a digital film lab in your camera. So it used to be when we designed a camera, ARRI kind of decided how the image should look in terms of the amount of grain, another word for noise, for example, fine detail and coarse detail in the image. And all ARRI cameras had a default texture. With this camera, you do have a default texture, but you also have a total of 9 different textures. So you have the default one, plus 8 more stylized ones, like a nostalgic texture that looks like film stock, for example, with a lot more grain. Then you also have a clarity texture and high clarity texture that really accentuate the fine detail in the image, the micro contrast and the overall contrast of the image. We also have ones like, for example, there's a cosmetic one that kind of softens up the folds and accentuations in people's skin that you might use to photograph an older or younger actress, for example. So that really allows a lot of flexibility in the camera, and these textures are part of the ARRI RAW and the ProRes recording, and they're done in camera. Another feature of the new camera and sensor is the enhanced sensitivity mode. So this is the ES mode in a camera. So at exposure index 2560 or higher, you have the ability to turn on this ES, this enhanced sensitivity that takes the black frame in between the exposure series and uses it as a noise map to help reduce the amount of noise in the visible image at the next frame. So that allows you to have much cleaner overall rendition of noise when you're shooting in the ES mode compared to not shooting in the ES mode. But we give you both options in the camera. So you can choose to use that ES above 2560 or higher, or you don't have to if you don't want to. But that allows for great performance in low light. The next step of the camera that's completely new is the Reveal color science. So this is a new color science that offers amazing color, and that's why we call it Reveal color science, because it offers to reveal more of what you see in the image. So in terms of very brightly saturated highlights, like neon signs or big red lights like brake lights, for example, the color rendition is incredible and considerably more accurate than previous cameras. Another thing about Reveal color science is that it has better overall tracking of color. So underexposed areas of the image and overexposed areas of the image actually track when it comes to the color rendition in those specific areas. So skin tones, for example, that are heavily underexposed or overexposed retain their natural look even when they're really, really hot or really deep there in the shadows, for example. So another characteristic of Reveal color science is the fact that we're no longer marrying the display output color space into the LUT file. So with the look files for the ARRI Reveal color science, we're actually taking just the creative intent. Just for example, if you want to make the image a little bit greener, a little bit more warm, that's the creative intent and it's in that file. However, instead of having to marry it like we used to with the display output like Rec 709 or PQ HDR or HDLG, it's just the creative intent with Reveal. So the camera actually will output the creative intent in either whatever you choose. You can do it in SDR 709, PQ HDR, HLG HDR, but you don't have to decide it before when you're building your look file and then loading it into the camera. You just bring that creative intent in with the Reveal color science. Another characteristic about the camera is the new ability to have HDR in the eyepiece. So it can do 500 nits HDR in the viewfinder. It's the same MVF2 that the Mini LF has, but with software and the horsepower of the Alexa 35, we can drive the HDR viewfinder at 500 nits. Another, if you look at the camera in terms of physical aspects, is you've got this new side panel here. You've also got an L-bus port at the front of the camera, so if you're using a third-party lens mount, you can still connect motors. You also have on here a serial port built in, so you don't need an L-cube anymore to connect devices like the UDM or the Cine tape or any other serial distance measuring devices. And then along the side, you can see we've maintained a lot of those great ports that people loved on the Mini LF, like the 3-pin Fisher 24-volt RS, 2-pin LEMO for 12-volt power, same 6-pin audio connector, you've got your same Ethernet, same power, and then over here you notice that we have not only the same timecode connector, but also you have 3 different BNC connectors, one for sync Genlock, like you get on the Mini LF, Then you have 2 independent SDIs. So these are totally independent 12G SDIs for 4K 60. They can have their own frame lines, peaking, status information, false color out of each of the 2 outputs. And you even have a second viewfinder port on the back of the camera if you want to connect the viewfinder back here. So lots of flexibility, and again, the first camera to have those independent 2 12G connectors. We have a B-mount system on the back for batteries because it's a 24-volt camera, not 12 volts. So this allows for our horsepower improvements in the camera with a new faster architecture that demands 24 volts. And you have 2 antennas here for Wi-Fi that will go with our new ARRI Companion app that we'll be releasing for iPadOS, iOS for your phone, and then M1 Max as well that come out with the camera. So that'll have a camera control dedicated app for it.
That's so awesome too. First of all, light as hell. Like I'm throwing this around. And these grips are great.
You like the Master Grips? Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah,
oh, they're awesome. I mean, everyone that uses them kind of like falls in love with them, and they always want to use them from then on. Yeah.